Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. All right. One guest that has jumped in popularity here, people really seem to enjoy, is Mr. David Frost, who I'm joined by right now. And David, welcome back.
Casey, thanks so much. Here we are. I call it the Day of the Living. Yesterday was a great celebration for the Day of the Dead and wonderful thing. But I say, now that we realize each of us is a $10 million portfolio, that's an incredible study that came out. I say on this Day of the Living, let's celebrate. And it's the second day of November. You've got blue, I've got blue. Great month to remember that half of the planet, men, need to worry more about their mental and physical health. So thought it would be fun to talk about mental and physical, or what we call mind-brain alignment. So,
gotcha. Yeah, I loved last week's show. And when you talk about, well, what does this mean to you? What does it mean, the road less traveled? What does that mean to a man like you?
Well, yeah, thank you. That quote from Vermont's poet laureate, Robert Frost, says that, mix it up. And in fact, I'll offer a term called immersion, which relates to another mnemonic. I know two chats ago, Casey, you put up with my 7 S's for living long and thriving into your 90s. Last week, we talked about the 5 M's for working with pain. But today, I'd like to talk about the mnemonic I choose, CHOOSE, related to your MBA or your mind-body alignment. But the road less traveled, I relate to immersion. If you do the same thing over and over again, you're not overloading in a physical training sense. You're not challenging your mind to stay active, to stay alert, kind of like rubbing your belly and patting your head like we did as kids. I guess you and I should do that, right?
If we could, can we?
But the road less traveled is to not fall into the mundane. It's to take that why not, the glass, those that ask why and those that ask why not, I say why not. So the road less traveled is said, why not? There might be pitfalls, there might be speed bumps, but there might be a whole lot of excitement by taking the road less traveled. So thank you to Robert Frost.
And what about Robert Frost that is special to you?
He is a distant relative. I'm actually more directly descended from Ralph Waldo Emerson. I love Emerson because he talked about my sport, rowing, but he also talked about the felicities of age. And, as I joking and jockeying around in my 70th year, I think felicities of age are pretty cool. But Robert Frost is a distant relative, and he was able to put profound thoughts into poetry. And yet he was pretty funny, too. I think people do not realize that this sort of dour elder Vermont poet was pretty funny. And if I could offer one that does relate to our topic today, mind and body, he's quipped, the brain is wonderful. It starts working as soon as you wake up in the morning and then does not stop until you get to the office. So one of the things we could talk about is how to take breaks, how to take that road less traveled into the workplace, not stare at the same screen too much without taking breaks to get your blood flowing. And if I could offer a mascot, probably Robert Frost mascot, but I'd offer a mascot for your favorite team. I call your favorite team you, that $10 million man or woman. Your mascot is the seahorse. Now, I don't know Latin, but hippocampus means little seahorse. And deep in our brains is this these two little seahorse-shaped organs in our brain that are responsible for important things. And many, many, many studies prove that the more exercise that you do, the better your little seahorses perform versus time. You start to think about age-related diseases, dementia, and the worst one of the dementias is, of course, Alzheimer's. And blood flow and appropriate nutrients to your brain help you take the road less traveled. So.
And Dave, does that have anything to do with the hippocampus? That have anything to do with HGH or something that's secreted when we sleep?
Sleep is very important for both generating serotonin, which is our mood stabilizer. And unfortunately, I have to talk to our neighbors over at the Salk Institute to get to those details.
Okay.
But the brain, amazing things happen when you give your brain enough time to rest and restore and recover and dream. For sure. So I'm dodging that because I don't know exactly about HGH and how our primordial brain part, like the little seahorses, work. I know they're darn important. And as Grace Slick said, feed your head, chase the rabbits, maybe not on hallucinogenics. In fact, I don't really encourage that.
Right.
But I say feed your head with rest, oxygen, and appropriate carbohydrates, because your brain burns a whole lot of carbohydrates to do its magic. It's a great computing memory device. It's wonderful.
It's amazing. Hey, talk to me about the MBA.
The MBA, I've talked, and I think maybe some of your listeners, if they've been bold enough to come back and listen to Frost again, I talk about fiscal banking and a master's of business administration. And of course, your podcast has business in its name. Well, I'm in the business of encouraging folks to remember you have a fiscal, FISCAL portfolio, which scientists during COVID said, you're a $10 million person, build your immunity, get your vitamin D, exercise, sleep, hug, so that you don't you don't have bad things happen to that $10 million portfolio. So the MBA I'm talking about is mind, brain, or mind-body alignment. Mind body alignment. If you're wired together, you should fire together. It's so my MBA is mind body alignment. You don't want your head severed from your torso or your limbs, of course. We're wired together unless you're Ichabod Crane or the Headless Horseman on Halloween. But we definitely know that there is a tremendous synergy. In this state, this goes way back to the Stoics, and probably before those wonderful Stoics that talk about exercise wonderfully, brandish your shoulders, then get back to thinking. So the Masters of Business Administration and the mind-body alignment, to me, there's a Venn diagram, if I remember grade school math. The Venn diagram says there's a tremendous intersection, almost a union between what we do for our minds and what we do for our bodies. So that's the MBA. I'm kind of wandering around with you today, Casey.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And there's certain phases that we have to talk about when we talk about the MBA.
Sure. Getting started and acknowledging that sitting is evil is one thing. I know that we knowledge workers, whether working from home, hybrid, or in the office, spend too much time sitting. So motion, as we've talked about previously, is medicine. So just remembering that precept that your mind and body needs motion, oxygen, and sugar to thrive is very important. Then you can get into more interesting things like understanding your M's, those monoamines, those wonderful
the mutts and
one that I'll add as we talk about the mind is norepinephrine, which is it gets you jazzed when you wake up in the morning. As Robert Frost said, if you're rested, you're ready to go, even if you don't have a cup of Java. So norepinephrine is a wonderful hormone that our body is able to generate on its own with exercise. So it's another hormone that people should really celebrate if they get to learn a little more. So yes, at the base level, it's understanding that motion and proper diet support your mind as well as your body. And then you can get into biochemistry. You can get into celebrating hydration. 2/3 of our body is oxygen, and hydrogen is up there too. 94% of these amazing bodies are sorry, I got a pop up here. 94% of our bodies are just 4 elements: carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
So diet, you get those 4 things to help you build those happy hormones and to help those little seahorses retain memory and be nimble as you age. So yes, there are levels for sure. I'm not a ninja in MBA. I did get the other MBA, the fiscal one, but I'm working real hard, and I encourage people to continue working on their mind-body alignment MBAs for the rest of their lives. That's that's the levels. You bet.
Okay. And what about if you wanted to comment on decisions for the roads taken, the roads taken in our early years compared to our older years?
Ah, I celebrate the felicities. If I can work backwards from the 70-year view back to golly, too soon old, too late smart, right? When you're younger, you can do amazingly fun things, but hopefully as you get older, you remember those things because you keep moving and feeding your head. But in youth, they're kind of in my pea brain. There's three stages of life. One is the nurturing from the time you're born until you get through puberty and all that, and realize that you're on the planet to make a difference and procreate, probably. But the second phase is kind of your professional phase. This is when you may have dependents, you may have challenges at the workplace. You're faced with a drudgery of execution, life's hassle. So there is an unhappiness U curve in the middle of life, but then there is the third phase where you can look back at those episodes and celebrate what you've accomplished, learn from your mistakes, and build on it. So that MBA is a lasting MBA for sure.
Hmm. And what is a third act?
Oh, that the encore years is what I call the third act. Now that you've got this body of knowledge, you've hopefully made it through some of the diseases that are not under your control. About 20% of disease is what we inherit from our parents. But believe it or not, the majority of disease and maladies and bad conditions are related to things that we do every day. Vitamin P from plants, those micronutrients that you get from superfoods like spinach and kale. Before kale became a superfood, it was what it surrounded the buffets at diners. That was kale before it was realized its tremendous vitamins and minerals to help you live longer and live better. So learning how to get to the point where you realize you're eating to live rather than living to eat. As you get older, your metabolism does slow down a little bit, but you should celebrate that in your encore years or your third act.
Gotcha. And can you tell me something happened in Vermont? I think February of '53. Does that ring a bell?
February 53, believe it or not, my little seahorses are working. On a Friday night, some guy named Dave Frost came into the world, and the rest is history for sure. Here, approaching by calendar year 70, but by MBA years, I argue if I can act, work, think, and feel like a 60-year-old, I've won. My goal is to grab at least another 10 years of life, prove the Social Security Administration wrong. It says I'm going to die at 85. I say, you might be right, but I'll bet against it. And I bet against it by working on my MBA. So yeah, it all started February 20th on the cusp of Pisces. I'm kind of mixed up. I'm part, what is it, Aquarius and Pisces, if you look at what the planets and moons and things do for us. But yeah, in Vermont,
that's when it started.
I showed up.
Okay, all right. And you always were you always so athletic? Or I know you were active in the Boy Scouts, and didn't you have like a pull-up record or something like that?
Yeah, I was a pretty pudgy kid. In fact, my family was diagnosed with a fat gene or series of genes in my DNA, which is give us a proclivity to retain white fat. So I was a pretty pudgy kid. When I started to turn some of that potential energy into muscle, then I was a big kid and I was able to do things. But in the Boy Scouts, the main reason I got into fitness was I had a merit badge. I had to do a pull-up for physical fitness. And that took a bit. Heavy kid, pudgy, but you set goals and you work at them. That's part of getting an advanced degree in life, isn't it? An MBA is working on something. So yes, the Boy Scouts, that merit badge set me on the road to realizing that activity, motion is lotion, stop, you drop, all those platitudes was what was really important.
And throughout high school, when did you get into the rowing? 'Cause I think you had a scholarship to do rowing.
America paid for my scholarship. It was an appointment to the Naval Academy.
Okay, so the Navy came next, right?
Yeah, and there's where I picked up rowing. My cousin had rowed at Brown University, a fine program with legendary coaches and great athletes. But when I got to college, pretty big kid as we mentioned, and wrestling and football. When you get to a fairly prestigious student body of student athletes, in that case, in that time, it was all males. Now it's boosted by extraordinary females. About 1/3 of the Naval Academy population is now women.
Oh.
Yay. And very diverse as well. So anytime you want to look at the cross section of America, look at the service academies for the types of folks that matriculate and graduate from there. But rowing started with me at the Naval Academy in 1971, and it can become a lifelong sport. So
you're still active in it. You still love it.
Just got back from Boston with the largest regatta in the world, the head of the Charles Regatta, rowing against folks my age, or in this case, I'm blessed enough to be at my age handicap without speed handicap contributes to the boat. So our boat averaged 50 years of age, but you can do the math to see what a 70-year-old does to it to be able to bring in some younger talent and have fun. So rowing is an amazing sport, indoor, outdoor, but any activity, as long as people are moving in something they love, something they're immersed in. Music, as we talked about last time, is a wonderful technique to reduce pain, but it also helps in immersion. I teach group fitness for the Row House, which is headquartered or was headquartered there in Manhattan. It's now nationwide. But we use music to help stimulate and help people get in the flow of the tempo, whether it's 70s music, new age, or whatever. My playlist today is about the weather. We're supposed to have rain here in San Diego, go figure. So it's a weather playlist.
Okay.
Here comes the rain again.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, like, how did the military prep you for a life of being fit and now helping other people being fit and athletic?
It started again. I went to a military academy, so the whole person multiple of academics, athletics, and ethics kind of made me what I was. So when I joined the Surface Navy, I thought, there's wonderful professions to be a Top Gun aviator or to be a submariner. But John Paul Jones was what we call a ship driver. So I went in the ship driving community, and I realized that I had to adapt. I measured it. It took me 22 laps to do a mile around the flight deck of my little ship. So here we are north of we're above the Arctic Circle. Back in the days when the Russians were coming, helping our battle group practice tactics to, if anything bad happened, to face the Russians. So on an idyllic Sunday afternoon, I'm watching a Russian Badger fly overhead as I'm doing 22 laps to the mile. You had to do it to feed your head. You had to be sharp day or night, day after day, and without getting oxygen and sugar to your brain, you weren't able to serve America in the service. So it was wonderful time, heady times, and memorable times because it reinforced for me how important the physical aspect was of your portfolio for leadership, all those things. Yeah.
Got you. How about your days when you were a professor? How did that happen, and what were you teaching?
I as a generalist, because in my career in the defense and aerospace industry, I learned about a lot of project management. So through the years, about half the time I've taught project management, which is how things get done in life. So an MBA for your mind, body, alignment is a project, isn't it? It has tangible goals. You've got metrics, and you can celebrate success when you get to the finish line and say, "Yeah, I made it to 100, and I'm still fit and talking, and my great grandkids love me. But I got into teaching because it fits my personality. Sometimes I am guilty of trying to tell people how the watch works instead of telling them what time it is. I teach mostly working adults, although I do coach youth as well. But in working with adult learners, repetition is very important, just like with exercise. There's a saying that to feed your head, to retain something in long-term memory, you need to be exposed to it 5 or 6 times. So things that I picked up in life as an adjunct, now not as a researcher, not as a PhD in academia, but adjuncts are brought in to bring their practical experiences from the workplace, from their life, to help adult learners adjuncts like me help adult learners make their own mistakes. Don't make the mistakes that I've made in my journey now in my encore years or third act.
Got you. And so when did the back problem, the discs, I think it was a herniated disc, when did that come about? And how much of a challenge was that?
Goodness. So fuse your spine at 49, 6 months before I finally threw in the towel and gave into intervention. I was striding to get ready for a half marathon. So this was in August of 2001, just before that dreaded event for New York City and the rest of the world, September 11th. But it took me. I had a business trip which I could not avoid. I was in London, England on September 11th, 2001, with this extraordinary pain, which was later diagnosed as a pretty severely herniated L5S1 disc. And nothing short of intervention could restore my quality of life and let me do the things I love, like row, work out, help others. So I was a pretty hurting camper for a while. And I used to poo-poo back problems until I myself had it. But prehab and rehab took out probably a year and a half of my life. But hey, here I am because of that experience. So again, learn from my mistakes and hopefully go find your own mistakes. But don't herniate a disc. It's not a good thing to do.
And so when did you, it seems like you've probably been doing it your whole life, but when did you kind of dedicate your whole life to fitness and to teaching people about motion and movement?
Well, progressive stages you mentioned earlier, Casey, the Boy Scout experience was that kind of crucible, my first crucible event where I said, holy smokes, if I want to move along in the scouting community, I had to do something. So get on, figure out what you need to do. Be a student of your endeavor, learn how to do pull-ups, lose a little weight, the wrong weight. You want to gain muscle, lose white fat, and do repetition, some combination of volume, intensity, and tempo to reach your physical goals. So in scouting, leadership is part of that. You go to a service academy in my late teen years and early 20s. Leadership was why we were there to serve America. And part of that was being fit, because long days, long, hard days, arduous conditions, so on and so forth. It was really important. So that was the second stage. Third stage was to maintain as best I could through the middle part of my middle ages when life was happening, right? Work could be a hassle, of course. Demands are high, both at home and at work. And if you don't give yourself time, your $10 million portfolio can slip away. And I was 49 when that 21 years ago when that disc herniated. So if you get a crucible event like that, the old platitude about, when you're handed a lemon, make lemonade. So the herniated disc was my chance to make lemonade and continue helping others. Unfortunately, our nation sent far too many men and women into harm's way. Many of them came back beat up and broken up from both brain and bodily injuries. And I was able to teach them rowing in a wonderful wounded warrior program. It's called Freedom Rows. So there's the coaching aspect of it. But then, so I have this body of knowledge in this banged up body. And I said, well, shoot, I'm a teacher. I've got the name Frost. Ralph Waldo Emerson is in the family tree. Maybe I could put some of these things down on paper and blogs or audiobooks. So that's kind of 3 stages: Boy Scouts, staying fit to lead others, be an example to others, and then realizing that I had a body of knowledge to share. So those 3 stages, Casey.
Gotcha. I've really enjoyed this kind of picking your brain here on this episode. But let me give you the last word here. Anything you want to leave the audience with, and tell us how to get a hold of you. That was fun.
All righty. Well, thanks so much. We'll get to that I choose mnemonic, which starts off with immersion, make life interesting, including your exercise, so you stay at it. But the thing I really encourage people to do, remember Grace Slick, if some of you folks remember those wonderful heady days of the rock and roll age. Feed your head. Your brain needs rest. It needs sugar, and in good form, not simple sugar, and oxygen. So with exercise, you'll support those little mascots, those seahorses in your brain that help you thrive and strive into your 90s. So if folks are interested in getting a hold of me, info@wellpast40.com. It's just I would just love to share one-on-one, one to few, or group settings, ways to thrive and strive.
Love it. David Frost, everybody, becoming a fan favorite over here very quickly. So, David, thank you so much. Can't wait to hear what you got to say next. Guys, we'll be right back. Stay there.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.